We're ready? Okay. I'd like to call to order the June 2nd, 2021 meeting of the TPA Citizen Advisory Committee pursuant to the TPA Emergency Order 2021-01. The Palm Beach TPA is conducting this meeting virtually using the Zoom webinar platform. The TPA select this platform because it does not require the public to purchase or download any additional software or equipment to attend this meeting. Aside from the Zoom webinar platform, the participants will use to attend remotely, and the public will also have no discernible difference of their ability to watch the meeting from that of someone physically attending the meeting. Instruction to join this virtual meeting, as well as other contact information for the TPA staff member to assist you, are provided on the published meeting agenda. Please note that although the members of the CAC are attending the meeting in person, the committee members will also appear today's meeting remotely, either via webcam or telephone. Additionally, the scheduled presenters and the CAC liaison will also be appearing via webcam or telephone. Staff, at this time, can you please call roll?
Yes, before I call the roll, I want to remind members present in person to unmute your microphones by pushing the button on the base prior to responding. And then those members present virtually, please unmute yourselves when I call your name. Ramona Bean.
Here.
Thank you. Terry Brown.
Here.
Mark Bruner.
Here.
Michael Carter.
Present.
Thank you. Greg Fagan. Michael Fitzpatrick. Mark Forrest. James Garvin.
Here.
Jason Mankoff is excused. Vijay Mishra. Ryan Rossi is excused. Paula Ryan.
Present.
Myra Newman.
Here.
Richard Vasilati.
Here.
Albert Richwagon.
Present.
Wen Dang.
Here.
We have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Are there any modifications to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
If there's no changes to the minutes, are there any changes to the minutes? If not, could I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
Motion to adopt the minutes?
Okay. Can I have a
Second.
second, please?
Second.
So I have a motion by James and a second by Ramona.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All
Aye.
those
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. 1D, general public comments at this time. I will summarize our public comments procedure for this virtual meeting. Written comments may be submitted online at the website provided on the agenda. Verbal comments may be made by virtual attendees using the raise hand feature in the Zoom platform. And lastly, verbal and or written comments may be provided by an in-person attendee submitting a comment card available at the welcome desk. At that time, are there any general comments received?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to 1E. I'd like to welcome Ramona Bean as nominated by Commissioner Marino and Michael Carter, as nominated by Commissioner Waldron, and the newest member to the CAC. Welcome. Would you like to take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself?
Sure, I can start first. Thank you for this opportunity. I do thank Commissioner Marino, and I'm honored to join you in our community here with the TPA. Currently, I'm with my children at summer camp, so that's why I'm coming in remotely right now. But I look forward to being part of this and telling our folks in our community in District 1 about the opportunity to keep up with what's going on in our county. Thank you.
All right, great, welcome. And the next person is Michael Carter.
Good afternoon, everybody. I also would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank Commissioner Waldron for this opportunity, and I look forward to working with everybody, and I'm happy to be here.
All right, Great, thank you so much. If any committee member has comments for the committee, please utilize the raise hand function of the Zoom platform and ask to be recognized. And then the member, remember to unmute yourself on your microphone once you're recognized. Mhm. No,
I don't see any hands
Okay.
raised, Madam Chair.
perfect. Moving to item 1F, I'd like to invite Jason to for the CAC liaisons report.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. What you see on the slide here is our liaison report, and I'll review a few of these items in order. There's a total of 10 items. The first one is the TPA staff update. We're excited to welcome Melissa Murray as our Public Relations Director and Cassidy Sparks as our Public Relations Specialist. They're in the room here for those of us who are in the room. And so they're new members to the TPA, and we look forward to their contributions as we all work collaboratively to advance the TPA's mission and vision. Florida Bike Month recap. May was National Bike Month, and so the TPA celebrated by participating in the Love to Ride Challenge. And as TPA staff, we rode a total of 724 miles, joining over 1,000 participants from 71 other workplaces in the Bike to Work Challenge. And so throughout the month, we rode over 266,000 miles were rode. That led to almost 5,000 pounds of carbon dioxide emissions mitigated through the use of bicycles. Next is our recent transit workshop, and that was hosted by the South Florida Transportation Council. Hosted a virtual workshop to discuss future implementation of commuter rail on the FEC railway, and that occurred on April 30th. And if you want to check out the recording, that's available at palmbeachtpa.org/CEFTC, SEFTC workshop. Additionally, the TPA held a workshop on May 14th to hear from transit industry leaders on how they are moving forward with enhanced transit. And you can find that recording at our website as well at palmbeachtpa.org/meetings. Next is the Florida Local Technical Assistance Program Center webinars. And so that's Florida LTAP Center. And they'll host basic highway plan reading webinars on June 1st, 8th, and 15th at 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And if you'd like to register, please visit floridaltap.org/training-calendar. And FDOT is hosting a GAP systems webinar training on June 7th at 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. for local agencies. And this system will replace the local agency program information tool system. And the website's a little hard to read out, but it is on the slides, and it'll be in your packet as well that you can click on to navigate to their website to register. And Bicycle Friendly Business Program recognizes employers for their efforts to encourage a more welcoming atmosphere for bicycling employees, customers, and community. So the application window is open through June 10th, 2021. And to learn more about this particular program, visit bikeleague.org/business. Next, we have walk-friendly communities. So municipalities are encouraged to apply for the walk-friendly communities designation through June 15th of this year. And for more information on this particular program, you can go to walkfriendly.org. And our governing board meeting will be held this month, June 17th at 9 a.m. in both in person and virtually. And you can view the agenda packet and meeting details at palmbeachtpa.org/board. And we've seen this item before, the high visibility enforcement funding. And so the next round of pedestrian and bicycle high visibility enforcement funding will become available on July 1st. And so there will be a law enforcement roundtable meeting on June 8th. from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office Training Center, and that's located on Cherry Road at 4215 Cherry Road in West Palm Beach. And to get more information on this particular item, go to ped.bike.safety@iptm.org. And lastly is the RAISE Grant Notice of Funding Opportunity, and there's an application window for rebuilding American infrastructure with sustainability and equity grants. And that spells for the acronym RAISE grant, formerly known as the Build and Tiger, is now open. And so the maximum grant award is 25 million, and the application deadline is July 12th of this year. And if you'd like to find out more information about this particular program, it is at transportation.gov/RAISE grant, RAISE grants, for more details. And that concludes the liaison report.
All right, thank you. Are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, does any committee members have any comments or questions to the liaison report?
I don't have any hands raised.
Okay, all right, we're gonna move to our action item. Motion to adopt fiscal year 22 to 26 tip. Again, I'd like to invite Jason, the TPA tip coordinator, to present on this item.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. So this afternoon, I will present the final draft of the Transportation Improvement Program for adoption. And just as a reminder, this is an action item that will require a vote at the end of the presentation and discussion. And this particular document covers a timeframe between 2022 and 2026 and lists all of the projects programmed by FDOT and their work program, as well as regional and local projects. And so just to review for the group, that the TPA's mission is to collaboratively plan, prioritize, and fund the transportation system. And by way of this transportation improvement program presented to you, we're focusing on the fund aspect of the TPA's mission. In addition to that, the adopting the final draft tip as outlined in the Palm Beach TPA public participation plan. The final draft before you today is presented as a whole document and can only be voted on as presented without changes. If there's additions or deletions to be considered, that would be considered at a future meeting after there's a public comment period to consider the proposed changes. Whoa. And so just before we begin, I'd like to go over the timeline as well. And the development of the TIP document before you today begins a year ago in July 2020 with the TPA priority list that is developed by the TPA and approved by the governing board. And that priority list is then provided to FDOT to evaluate funding and costs and then incorporate the priority projects into the draft tentative work program by FDOT. And that draft tentative work program is then provided to the TPA for us to begin to be incorporated into the draft tip that I presented last month and is now in the final form up for adoption today in June. And then once this is approved, we'll begin operating under this new document in months following. This is also another summary, a snapshot by way of a bar chart that shows you the sections in the tip and the total amount of funding within those sections. And you can see from this chart that the strategic intermodal system capacity section has the lion's share of the funding, which includes both federal and state funding. But incorporated into this is the turnpike projects and those are funded through turnpike revenues. So getting into the strategic intermodal system projects, as I mentioned, you see that the turnpike widening projects that I mentioned, plus 3 interchange projects, amount to $696 million for turnpike projects. Second to that is I-95 interchange projects from FDOT, and there's a total of 17 of them in our TIP document, whether they're either new or modified, and that totals $222 million. And following that is a couple of specific projects for I-95 widening studies, which include Linton Boulevard to Okeechobee Boulevard, Indian Town Road to Mountain County Line, as well as Beeline Highway widening that also includes Beeline North Lake intersection. And that's a total of $144 million. And lastly, we have the State Route 80 turn lanes at Australian Avenue, as well as State Route 7, rounding out the list. And so now I'll go over the 3 TPA priority project lists, starting with the state road modification projects. And this particular program has a total of 190 million in this section, with road construction with 135 million, which includes the State Route 7 extension, as well as the Atlantic Avenue widening. Next is the 561 corridor plan, 561 plan corridors, which is our transit corridors. And those transit corridors include US 1, Okeechobee Boulevard, Lake Worth Road, and Boynton Beach Boulevard. And that totals 37 million. Next in the state road modifications is the State Route 80 lighting project for 15 million. And lastly, approximately 3 million for other state roadway modifications, which are a collection of intersections that have just begun design as part of this TIP document. The next is the local initiative projects, and this is the local initiatives as an annually competitive grant program administered by the TPA. And within this TIP document, there's a total funding amount of approximately $113 million, with the majority of it, 76.4 million, in complete streets projects for bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Next is transit infrastructure and other projects for a total of 17.5 million, and that includes the fare interoperability project, some new bus shelters, conversion to electric buses, and new rolling stock trains for SFRTA, who operate Tri-Rail. Next is some signal upgrades within Boca Raton and the town of Palm Beach. And lastly is the planning activities, which includes the operating budget for the TPA, as well as corridor studies that are conducted by the TPA. And then the other annual competitive grant program is the Transportation Alternatives Program. And within this program, there's a total of 18 million in funding within this TIP document, with 15 million in complete streets projects for bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And lastly, there's about 3 million, the remaining balance, for ADA compliance projects within some local neighborhoods, as well as bringing some transit shelters up to ADA compliance as well. Now here on the slide are a collection of projects that all come from the Palm Beach County 5-year road program. And these are all upcoming projects in the next coming year in 2022. And so these are all highlights that you'll see coming on, that will be happening on roadways fairly soon in the next year or so. And they are some resurfacing projects you see here, as well as some county roadway capacity projects, which amount to mostly all widening projects from 3 lanes to 5 lanes. And lastly, there's a bridge replacement project here for County Road 880 over the C-15 canal. And so that concludes the reviewing all of the projects that are in the Transportation Improvement Program. And now we'll go over the fiscal analysis component. And this was part of our strategic plan to provide some analysis on particular funding sources. And this first one is the State Comprehensive Enhanced Transportation System Tax, or we'll call it SCET tax. And this particular tax, what we're tracking here is the amount collected within the county and ensuring that the amount collected here is programmed on projects within the county. And in fact, that is happening, and we are on target. As you see on the slide here, there is a balance of about 10.5 million remaining. However, that 10.5 remaining is spent on district-wide projects, which includes Palm Beach County within the district. And the next part of this fiscal analysis is managed lane revenues. And for managed lane revenues, that's the I-95 express lane revenues in Palm Beach County, with the Boca Raton section that is currently open and operational and collecting revenues at this time. And so those toll revenues can be used on specific things that include operation, maintenance, and improving the facility where they're collected, as well as operating, maintaining, and improving state highways within counties where the revenues are collected. And lastly, to support express bus service on the facilities. And so the final part of the fiscal analysis is the multi-use corridors of regional economic significance, which is also called MCORS. And MCORS is not within Palm Beach County, but is on the western side of Florida. And we're tracking the MCORS development and those particular projects just to ensure that if there's any significant impact or any kind of financial impact that would adversely affect or take away from funding for projects programmed or planned for Palm Beach County. And you can see on the slide here that recent activity is that Senate Bill 100 is expected to dissolve the MCORS program. And so we're keeping an eye on the program, and we'll provide updates when things happen. And with that concludes the presentation, and I'll open up for discussion. And
Okay, thank you. Are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any comments from the committee members?
Yes, I have Myron with his hand raised.
Okay. Myron?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Jason and I had an hour-long conversation last Friday about the relationship between the TIP and the long-range transportation plan. That conversation was prompted by the second whereas clause in the TPA resolution that was included in the agenda package with the TIP. That second clause says that, and this is a requirement of federal law, that the TIP reflects the investment priorities of the TPA's adopted long-range transportation plan. Now, we had a long conversation about the extent to which the TIP does reflect the investment priorities of the long-range transportation plan. And Jason described to me the 3-page checklist that he has to go through to assure that projects that are on the TIP are consistent with the LRTP. But in that 3-page checklist, he could not find any item that checked the cost of the project to the cost feasible estimate in the long-range transportation plan. Now, the long-range transportation plan is supposed to be a cost feasible plan, and each project has a target cost. And according to federal regulations, the TPA, the TIP can be consistent with that as long as the cost of the project does not exceed 120% of the cost feasible figure in the long-range transportation plan. Now, since no one apparently, at least Jason's checklist, and no one checks to see if the actual amount of the project, cost of the project, is within 120% of what's in the long-range transportation plan. And I asked Jason to check to see if there's anybody else that makes these analyses. The problem in this case is that I know of at least one project which exceeds the cost feasible figure in the long-range transportation plan, which is just recently adopted, by more than 120%. In fact, specifically 137%. So this whereas clause is not true as a matter of fact. And I'd like to ask Jason if he found some other way in which the cost feasibility is checked when assembling the TIP. I'd appreciate his response to that, whether
Yes.
he found anything.
Yes. So I convened with our executive management team, and when we evaluated the long-range transportation plan and the TIP document that's before you today, and the previous one as well, that there's a difference in the long-range transportation plan gives you the expected cost to construct the project, and it's not the total cost of the project. It's just the unfunded portion that is expected to be needed to construct the
No. That
project.
can't be possibly
And so-
true. It's the total cost.
So what's, so what-
Jason, you're wrong on that.
please let me
federal
finish.
law-
Please let me finish.
Well,
Thank you.
you're
Please
can
let me
finish.
finish. Thank you. So what you see in the long-range transportation plan is not the total project cost. It's only the amount of funding that is required to finish the construction of the project. And so what you see in the TIP document, there are several numbers. There is numbers for the amount to construct the project programmed over the life of the horizon of the TIP document, as well as total project cost, which are larger numbers that could lead you to believe that the project is more than 20% because the total project cost is listed in the TIP, but not in the long-range transportation plan. Now, in the event that perhaps there is an elevated cost, this is an adoption of the entire TIP document. And if there was an elevation in costs in the future, which could happen, and it could be over 20%, that would be addressed by way of an amendment. And amendments is what triggers that 20% overage in cost. In addition to adding a phase or adding lanes to a project, whenever I present amendments, I give you all of the details of what triggers an amendment, what constitutes an amendment. And in fact, there is a 20% cause of elevated cost for a project. So that's the research that I've done to compare the LRTP and understanding what costs are represented in the LRTP and how they contrast with, or at least the difference in the numbers in the TIP document. And that's where the total project cost could lead you to believe that the total project cost is beyond what's listed in the LRTP, which is only the additional cost remaining to construct the project.
I'm sorry, Jason. The management team may have told you that the LRTP is only a remaining cost, but that's absurd. Because the LRTP talks about projects that are going to occur over the next 25 years, and there are no remaining costs at all for some of these projects. And that's just, it just boggles the mind that you could say the LRTP is the controlling document, not the tip. The LRTP by law has to be done every 5 years. It's a long process, and it was adopted just recently, by the way. And it is the total cost, because it is the cost feasible. The LRTP makes an estimate of the funds that are going to be available over this period of time, and assigns cost feasibility to these projects. And it's not just construction cost, it's total cost. And if the total cost of a project is inconsistent with the LRTP, it's certainly reasonable to file and propose an amendment to the LRTP when that's discovered, but not after the fact. If you're going to manage a program where you have a plan and then you institute projects to complete that plan, the plan is superior, and the program has to conform to it. And if the program, it turns out you've got a problem, then you propose an amendment to the plan, but not after the fact.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments from other committee members?
I have Ramona Bean with her hand raised.
Okay, Ramon?
Hey there, and do forgive me, I turn off my video just when I'm walking. Thank you, Jason, for the presentation. I just wanted to, sorry, I'm catching my breath. It's like 5,000 feet up here. I wanted to just clarify on the Boca Express Lane revenues. I heard what you said, and I just want to make sure I heard it right. So our county is able to utilize those funds, but it can also be used for the state projects on our county and that kind of thing. If you could just review that real quick, just a short bit. Thank you.
Okay. So with the I-95 Express Lane revenues, there is a prioritization of where those funds can be used. And the first place where they're used is to operate and maintain the specific facility. And second to that is for other state road modifications after the operation, maintenance, and construction of the actual facility where the funds are collected, the revenues are collected. And then third is the support of transit facilities, transit operations on those facilities. But I couldn't give you details of exactly how the funds are used outside of the
Right.
actual facilities that they're
What you
collected
meant to say
on.
is like every dollar collected within the managed lanes, it should be reinvested back into maintaining that managed lanes. So it does not filter through a different program.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for clarifying, Madam Chair, and Jason. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the committee?
Yes, I have Richard Vazzalotti followed by Myron.
Okay, Richard?
I thank you. I was just listening to what Myron was speaking about there, and that was a lot of information there. It appeared that Myron was pinpointing something about a long-range transportation plan that was recently adopted. I don't know if his comments were geared towards whatever that recently adopted plan was. I'd like him to clarify on that, where he was going with that, please, and thank you.
I think this comment is directed at Myron to clarify, and I believe Myron stated, what I'm hearing is that the TIP and the LRTP project per project, the cost varies. And what the TPA has clarified is that it varies because whether if it's through design planning or construction and construction management, there are changes as you're going through details design, and those changes are not reflective of a long range plan. That's something that is estimated 20 years out. Ultimately, if there are any changes after the plan is adopted, then the individual project comes back to this board and the TPA board for for an amendment that will be reflected within the TIP itself.
I'm not sure that you answered Richard's question. So let me respond because as he directed it to me. The long-range transportation plan is a requirement of federal law that says metropolitan planning organizations, and the TPA is a metropolitan planning organization, must plan out 25 years in advance. And every 5 years, revise and update that plan. The plan describes all transportation, the vision for transportation in the future over the next 25 years, and including estimates in 5-year segments. And it is supposed to be a cost feasible analysis where, so that it's not everything everybody wishes for, but what is feasible given the amount of funds projected to be available in the future. There's a recognition in law that says you can't know these things terribly precisely, so that if a particular project comes in more expensive than is in the cost feasible plan, that's okay as long as it does not exceed 120% of the original projected cost feasible amount. And also according to law, the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Grant, every 5 years has to be consistent with that number. Now, Jason has said that only some of the costs are in the long-range transportation plan. I do not believe that is true.
So the plan is presented as a whole. What we have is the 2022 to 2026 plan. It's presented, and it's comprised of many projects in the county. I believe that the plan is adopted as a whole, as a package. You know, Myron, you have the opportunity to support or not support this TIP as presented. And I think that we're at this point where we have a action item as a board, and it is our responsibilities to look at this entire plan and make a decision if we can support it as a board of the entire plan. I'm not sure if we are going to be able to look through the details of every single project during this meeting and be able to.
Madam Chairman, this is the problem we have. The staff has not looked at the cost of these projects. And so the whole process is invalid. I want to make 2 points. One is that the draft TIP was presented to us last month as an information item, which means we could not question anything in it. Now it is presented to us as an all or nothing item. We cannot object to anything in it. This is not a way you run a railroad. This is not transparency. Now, Jason has told me, and he can confirm, that there's nothing on his checklist that says that the funds in the TIP are consistent with the cost feasible estimate in the long-range transportation plan. And if that's true, then this second whereas clause is invalid. Now, we cannot change the TIP. But I move, Madam Chairman, that we strike the second whereas clause from the resolution.
I don't know if that is a motion on the table. That is an item that, can you verify for me, Margie? Because I think right now what we have is the TIP. If there are any additional items that is not related to the TIP.
Myron, to clarify, you're asking.
There's been no motion on the floor to recommend approval of the TIP. I make my motion to delete the second whereas clause in the draft TPA resolution, which is in the package.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to remove the second whereas clause.
Yes, and the draft tip
The draft tip.
resolution that was in the agenda
Right.
packet.
So for this item to move forward, I need a second from another committee member. All right,
Hearing no second,
There are
Madam
no
Chair.
seconds.
Can I
then-
interrupt for a second? I'm trying to find out where Myron's going with this. We're talking about the 22 to 26 long-range transportation projects. Is that where we're going with this with the tip with everything that you're talking about here? What
Yes.
specifically are you talking about? Because when we start dismantling what's in some of the language here, this creates a domino effect and other things. And I would like to specifically know what you're leaning towards. We know what's on the long range transportation plan, and we have some new members on here. Maybe Madam Chair, you could give a brief 1-minute rundown for the new members, what's on this long range transportation plan, but there's a hotly contested item on there. And I'm starting to feel like this is the direction Myron's going, and I'm not feeling real comfortable right now with this.
Richard,
I want to know where we're going with this.
yeah,
I'd like-
sure.
I'd like to separate that particular project from my concern.
Which project is that?
It's the extension of State Road 7.
Okay,
Which
Okay, so we
comes
got
in
it.
at 137% of the cost feasible business in the long range transportation. But leaving that aside, I think there's something wrong with the process here. If the TPA staff is not checking the cost feasibility of what's in the tip, then the tip is independent of the long range planning process that the TPA goes through excruciatingly. And what I would like to see is a change in Jason's checklist, so that that there's an item in Jason's checklist that says, this is what is in the long range transportation plan as a cost feasible estimate for this project. This is what this project is now expected to cost, and it is consistent. That's what it's a process problem.
There.
Okay.
So I think there's two.
Okay.
I know that no matter what I object to, the FDOT is going to go do what it does. Okay. And if FDOT is ignoring the cost feasible figure in the long range transportation plan, when it provides information to Jason to put in the tip, Jason ought to be looking at that figure.
So
And I would like to
let
see it
the,
shown.
Myron, please let the TPA respond.
So I hear your concern, Myron, and we reviewed this project at length, and I understand your concern. And so because this checklist is provided to me as a cross-reference for consistency, and it's provided by FDOT, I will follow up with FDOT and I will make the recommendation, or at least the request, that is there an item that can be added to cross-reference cost if it's, and how best to go about to do that. Their consideration for consistency is that the projects that are referenced in the tip are in fact in the LRTP. And that is correct. And that is one of the items that we verify by way of giving each project in the long range transportation plan a unique number, although it doesn't have to be that way, to actually verify that those projects make it into the tip document. And what is consistent is you can find that same number and that LRTP number in our tip document. So you know that the projects that are listed in the Transportation Improvement Program are in fact from the LRTP as a consistency check. What you're asking is about the financial fees, the financial aspect of these projects. And I'll just follow up with DOT to find out how they would like to incorporate that and how and what they respond with. This
Appreciate
checklist that I
Let me know
do,
what you find,
So
because-
maybe
is that okay? I mean, is
Maybe
that
if I can make
acceptable?
a
That's kind of where
recommendation.
I feel like that's the consistency check that you're looking for. And I feel like because that seems to be the focus, I can follow up with DOT and see what their response is and follow up with you on that item.
All right, thank you, Jason. Margie, I think that one of our board member is concerned with not being able to move this item forward. I think the motion or the item being presented is that staff recommends the adoption of fiscal year 22 through 26 tip. Right now, I don't have a motion on the table for approval. I pseudo have a motion to change the process, which is not the staff recommended motion. Can you give me some advice on how to move this forward?
So Madam Chair, the committee is welcome to make a motion. If there's no second, then there's no discussion on the motion and you move forward with the
Right.
item on the table. So because there was no second on this motion, then you can move forward with a new motion. I
Right.
will note that VJ does have his hand raised.
So,
Please speak into the mic.
so what I want to make sure that I understand is that I want to echo what Richard said is, we don't want to unravel the whole tip process here because of just one project issue. If we can focus on the presentation, what was given to us, focus on the tip as a whole document and not just because of one project, we want to make some changes. If we have a motion on the floor, we can vote on it. But I think we need to go with staff recommendation is to just vote it as a one document. And if the board agrees, let's vote on yes. If board doesn't agree, then vote the other way. I don't think we have even considered the actual agenda from the staff. So before we start to change that.
Right, Margie.
Madam Chair, for clarification, there is no motion on the floor. There was no second to Myron's motion. So there's currently no motion on the floor.
Right.
I would make a motion here to adopt the tip as presented by the staff.
Okay, I have a motion from VJ.
I will second. This is Ramona.
So I have a motion by VJ and a second by Ramona. And I have Myron with his hand raised.
Myron.
I just want to point out to VJ that while I am aware of one project, Jason cannot swear on a Bible that there are not other projects that also exceed the long-range transportation plan. And that's the problem. We just don't know.
Madam Chair, if I can respond.
Yes.
So, Myron, I agree with you. The fact is that the LRTP is a much longer schedule. So the cost and today's tip is going to be, there is going to be some variation. I don't expect that every project is going to be compare apple to apple. So I think we need to, at this point of time, we need to focus on the tip proposal we have in front of us. That's why I'm proposing to go ahead with this one.
Yeah.
But I do understand there are going to be some projects is going to be way off, some projects is going to be way under also. So we just need to focus on the agenda in front of us, which is the whole tip as a document and not specific projects.
All right, thank you, VJ. Margie.
I have Mark Bruner with his hand raised.
Okay, Mark Bruner.
Okay, yes, I guess this is first a process question for us and then maybe going forward. Is it appropriate to recommend or offer an amendment to the a motion on the floor to add that the TPA and TPA staff should contact DOT to clarify how the checklist can be modified to reconcile the TIP funding information and the LRTP information to make sure that they are not inconsistent? Or if they are inconsistent, why?
According to Robert's Rule of Order, you are able to make an amendment on the motion. We have a motion on the table.
Correct, but
Okay, then I make that as an amendment.
okay, so for clarification, Mark, you can either make a friendly amendment and the motion maker can accept it, or you can make a substitute motion.
I'm making that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so VJ, as the motion maker, If you need him to state it again for your clarification, he can. So Richard, if I can have you restate, I'm sorry, Mark, if I can have you restate what amendment you would like.
Okay, it is beyond the approval of the tip. It is, the amendment is to have the TPA and TPA staff contact the Department of Transportation to determine if the checklist used by TPA staff can be modified to address inconsistencies in funding between the tip and the LRTP if there are funding inconsistencies in the documents.
No, we only have 3.
So if I understand, you just want the staff to reach out to the DOT and find
Exactly.
This is not changing the proposal, tip proposal. You're just asking them to reach out and get some additional info. I think that is a reasonable.
Yeah,
expectation.
I think Vijay, so Mark made a friendly amendment. It is to coordinate with DOT to bring back to the board with additional information to identify project specific. It's your motion. You may have the opportunity to accept it as a friendly amendment.
And Vijay, if you prefer, just so everybody's clear, I can show the motion that I understand that, and I wrote down on the screen. That way everyone can see it at the same
Yeah,
time.
it'll be best if we can see
Okay.
it.
So I have a motion to adopt the fiscal year 22-26 tip as presented and direct TPA staff to contact FDOT to determine if the checklist can be modified to address inconsistencies in funding between the tip and LRTP. Did I understand that correctly, Mark?
Yes, you did.
Okay, so Vijay, this is the friendly amendment he's asking, the second part directing staff. You accept it, okay.
Okay, so-
And then Ramona as the seconder, I just want to confirm that you accept as well.
Okay, thank you for explaining it. And I do accept. Thank you.
Okay,
Right.
so Madam Chair, the motion on the floor now is the one shown on the screen.
Right. So we have a motion on the table to adopt the fiscal year 22-26 tip as presented and direct TPA staff to coordinate with FDOT and determine the checklist can be modified to address inconsistencies in funding between the tip and the LRTP. At this point, are there any
I
further
do
discussions?
have Richard Basilati with his hand.
Okay,
and I
Richard.
may have another one, but my screen is kind of blocked right now. Just Richard with his hand raised.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
I thank you. Man, I have feelings about this, and anytime when something comes up with and I really think this is directed somewhere, there's something embedded in this. This is dealing with the State Road 7 extension, the shenanigans over the years by the city of West Palm Beach with this State Road 7. Mark, I'm sorry, you were nominated by the city. I believe that there's something going on here. It's another poker in the fire trying to get this project shut down, and that's wrong. And I don't feel good about this. I'm sorry. I think there's more to this than what you're saying. That's my gut feeling when it comes to the State Road 7. To shut this down, there's some bad players in this, and this has been going on for way too long. And that's my feeling on this. When you bring this up and you're talking about the LRTP, and we know this is about State Road 7, I'm not feeling good about this or any further changes. This is long overdue. It's in the books to be done. The shenanigans need to stop, and this road needs to be finished. And just something doesn't feel right here.
All right, thank you so much. So we have a motion on the table to adopt the 2022-2026 tip with the friendly amendment to coordinate with FDOT. Are there any other comments?
No.
I don't have any other hands raised, Madam Chair. So
Right.
if you're ready for a roll call.
I'm ready for roll call. Thank you.
Okay. And as a reminder, if you can please state yes or no when I call your name. Ramona Bean,
Yes.
Thank you. Terry Brown,
Yes.
Mark Bruner,
Yes.
Michael Carter,
Yes.
Greg Fagan,
Yes.
Michael Fitzpatrick, and I believe he's still absent. I just want to double check. So Michael Fitzpatrick will be marked as absent. Mark Forrest. And I believe he is still absent, so he'll be marked as such. James Garvin,
Yes.
Jason Mankoff is absent. Vijay Mishra,
Yes.
Ryan Rossi is absent. Paula Ryan,
No.
Myra Newman,
No.
Richard Vasilati,
Yes.
thank you. Albert Richwagon,
Yes.
Wen Deng.
Yes.
It passes with 2 opposed, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So we're moving on to an information item, the Atlantic Avenue project update from Turnpike to Jog. I'd like to invite Alexander Estrada from FDOT to present this item.
Thank you. Today we're going to present an update to the previous presentation on the Atlantic Avenue PD&E from Turnpike to Jog. So we have a brief agenda. We're going to talk about the project, the traffic projections, and the proposed alternatives, as well as the schedule. With me, I have the staff that's working on PD&E with John that's going to go over in more detail, and then we're going to take any questions. You can go ahead, John.
Thank you, Alex. So I'm John Scarlatos from Scalar Consulting. I'm serving as the Assistant Project Manager, and I also have Hassan, which is our lead traffic engineer with us to help answer any questions you may have after the presentation. So our agenda today, we're going to talk briefly about the project, go over some of the traffic projections, the proposed build alternatives, and the schedule. So the purpose of the project, we're looking to address capacity needs to meet existing and future travel demand. So we're doing 4 to 6 lane widening, approve the local and regional transportation network while providing enhanced safety for not just vehicles, but bicyclists and pedestrians as well. So some of the deficiencies and needs, the project is needed to relieve congestion. Certain segments of the corridor are already over capacity. This project has been identified in the Palm Beach TPA 2045 LRTP. Some improvements regarding emergency evacuation. Since this connects to the Turnpike, which serves as an SIS facility. Currently, there's an existing sidewalk gap from Michelangelo Boulevard to west of Jog Road on the south side of Atlantic Avenue. So as part of this project, we'll be looking to include sidewalks and buffered bicycle lanes on both sides. So that'll take care of any gap for sidewalks and bike lanes. So here's our study limits. We're from the Turnpike to Jog Road. It's approximately 1.8 miles in length. The entire project is in unincorporated Palm Beach County. As I previously mentioned, we're looking to widen from 4 to 6 lanes in addition to accommodating bicyclists and pedestrians with new features. Right-of-way along the corridor varies from approximately 113 to 175 feet. Our context classification is a C3 suburban. It's an urban principal arterial with a speed limit of 45 miles per hour. So this is our project development process. The planning phase has already been completed. We are now here in the PD&E phase, which is approximately a 2-year phase. Following the PD&E study, we'll get into the design and right-of-way, which is another 2 to 3 years. And then once that's complete, the project goes into construction, which is another 2 to 4 year process. So here we're looking at what we have in the no-build design year 2045, which is the year which we're designing for all of our improvements. So we're showing here the existing lane configurations, what the delay is at all of these intersections, and what the level of service will be in the design year 2045, assuming no improvements are made. As you can see, a lot of these, which are here in the hot pink colors, those are all going to be operating at level of service F. So we will not be meeting operational standards. at a minimum of D, which is the requirement for this corridor. So this is what happens in the 2045 under no build. So in the build condition for the design year 2045, where we have now added the widen from 4 to 6 lanes, you'll notice significant improvement throughout all of the intersections, where the only exception being is Jog Road, where even with the additional through movement, we still have a level of service F overall for the AM and PM peak periods. So with that, we started looking at some more innovative or additional concepts on what we can do to improve the Jog Road intersection. So to start with, I just want to go over some of the adjacent signals and access points from Jog Road. We do have a left turn that comes into the Kings Point Shopping Center, which is just a left turn median opening. Over here, we have Seville Terrace, which allows for left turns in as well as left turns out. And we do have a signalized intersection on Jog Road just south of Atlantic Avenue, which is another access point for the Kings Point Shopping Center. The existing year operational analysis, so as of 2018, we were already below the D, so improvements are needed today at this intersection, and obviously will suffer even more in the design year 2045 if no improvements are made. So this is one of the concepts that we're looking at, which is maintaining the existing dual lefts at all approaches that are out there today. So we did not expand the intersection in terms of adding an additional left turns or right turn lanes. This is only for the through lane improvements. And just by doing that, you'll notice we've had a few changes to access. The first one being we will need to close the westbound left turn into the Kings Point in order to accommodate additional storage for the left turns. By doing so, we'll add another left turn lane here at Seville Terrace to help accommodate some of the U-turn movements that'll be needed since we would have this closure at number 1. The number 3 here, the existing signalized intersection, we would need to close that, and that's in order to extend the existing left. This is an extremely heavy movement, the left northbound to westbound movement. So by doing that, we'll have to close this signalized intersection. And then the other location here, this is just basically where we're putting in the additional westbound through on the opposite side of the lane is already there, just striped out. So we would just be pushing out and reconstructing a new right turn lane in that location. So the main issue with this concept is that it still will not give us acceptable level of service in the design year 2045. We will still have level of service F. The benefit of this project is that or this intersection concept is that it has much less right-of-way impacts as opposed to some of the other concepts that we're going to present to you next. So this is the first one, which is a partial displaced left turns. And the way this works is we have now created a left turn crossover where left turns will now have their own lane which crosses over the westbound movements and on the eastbound movements. And that'll have new signals for those lefts. And as these left turns are going, the benefit of it is that the through movements and the right turns can still go at the same time. So by doing this type of configuration, the key benefit of it is that we will have acceptable level of service. So it is a little bit more of an unconventional intersection than what people are used to seeing. So we have some additional signals that'll be put into the intersection. Pedestrians will still, they have crossing through the right turn lane, and then they'll be able to come across there. So there is some islands here for pedestrians. Bicyclists may still use sidewalks if they like, or be on the main line where the 7-foot buffered bike lanes will be accommodated. So this is kind of just showing you what the operations are for this type of configuration. And here is the layout, which shows you some of the associated impacts with doing this. So the first one would be needing to close the existing left turn into the Atlantic Square Shopping Center, and that is to accommodate left turns for the displaced lefts that we're now introducing to come along here. The second one is similar to the previous concept where we would still close the left turns into this shopping center, and that's to accommodate the displaced lefts as well. And then at this location, at Seville Terrace, the existing left turn lane in, we would have to remove that movement as well in order to keep the storage length for this to be able to operate efficiently and give us acceptable level of service. So anyone that's making a left turn into Seville Terrace today would then have to go further down to the next intersection, which would be Cumberland Road, where we would introduce a U-turn lane there, which is currently a T intersection. So they would make the U-turn and then come back to come into Seville Terrace. Number 4, this is similar as the previous one. Again, we would have to remove that signalized intersection, and that's in order to accommodate the left turn movement, which, as I mentioned, is a very heavy movement. So this concept, the best thing about it is that it will give us acceptable level of service in the design year 2045. However, there are some negatives on here. The key thing being the amount of right-of-way acquisition that's going to be needed here in the northwest quadrant. You'll see that's in front of all these homes in this area, as well as here in the shopping centers. We have pretty decent amount of right-of-way acquisition, and then even back here along some of these residential properties as well. So what we looked at as a substitute or an alternative to what I just showed you, the partial displace, is using a conventional intersection, but expanding all of the approaches from the existing dual lefts to triple left. By doing so, one thing that we get to do is we don't need to close this intersection like we showed in the partial displaced left concept. The number 1 location, we would still need to close this movement into the west, about the left turn lane into the Kings Point. That applies on all of the concepts. The thing with this is that we still get to keep the left turn into Seville Terrace as opposed to the partial displaced lefts, and we would include an additional left turn lane for those to accommodate U-turns since we have this closure. This, similar to the other 2 concepts, we would still have to close this signalized intersection in order to have the triple left storage. The benefit from this versus the other one is you'll notice as far as right-of-way acquisition, it's not nearly as aggressive as the previous concept. It'll be very minimal takes along this area, a little bit less possibly in here. The one thing is here along the north side, the triple lefts, on the right side of Jog Road on the north leg, there is right-of-way take that leads to the back of some of these residential parcels further up. This concept, the key downfall is that it still will not achieve acceptable level of service in the design year. However, it will give you much less intersection delay as opposed to maintaining the existing dual left turn configuration, which was the first one that I presented. So the typical section for the main line that we're looking to build is a 6-lane urban typical section with a 22-foot median and 11-foot lanes with 7-foot buffered bike lanes on both sides, curb and gutter, and a 10-foot sidewalk on the south side and an 8-foot wide sidewalk, excuse me, on the north side. So what we did was we took a look at a couple of alignment alternatives. So this here, which we're calling the best fit, is kind of taking into consideration utilizing as much right-of-way or green space on the north side of Atlantic Avenue, which would only result in impacts with utilities and signage, as opposed to getting into business impacts with hitting parking lots and things of that sort. So we did as much as we could on the north side, and with the rest of the right-of-way acquisition that we need to be done within the Lake Worth Drainage District's L34 canal. Now, we have been meeting with the Lake Worth Drainage District, and they have expressed some concern that they would like to have a minimum of 75 feet for the canal right-of-way width. So you'll notice here in some areas, we will be less than that. In those areas where we fall short of the minimum 75, we're looking to either provide dual 54-inch culverts or a 10 by 30 box culvert in replace of the canal. And in some of the other areas, we'll also be looking to shift the canal a little bit further north to give them a wider berm for maintenance on the south side. So this concept is from the Turnpike to Cumberland Drive. The next typical sections from Cumberland to Jog Road. As far as the roadway features, everything is still the same as the previous one with 11-foot lanes, 10-foot sidewalks, 8-foot sidewalks, and so forth. You'll just see the right-of-way does get much less in terms of takes here in this area. There is no existing canal on the south side within Cumberland to Jog. It's more of just a ditch. So we'd be looking to pipe the existing ditch, which the Lake Worth Drainage District does not have any concerns with at this time. So this concept, again, the typical section itself is still the same as what we've already presented, but the alignment for this is a little bit different, where we're trying to maximize the take or do more of the take on the south side of the corridor and not do the impacts on the north side where there's a lot of businesses and residential properties and so forth. You'll notice there is one note here that we have that there's about a 4 to 8 foot take from east of the E2E canal, which is just east of the Turnpike to Hagen Ranch Road. And that's only to accommodate transitions coming off from the bridge without having to impact the north side of the bridge, which was recently constructed. So once we get through that transition, we avoid any take on the north side, and it's all going to be on the south side in the canal right of way. So with that, we have a greater amount of take on the south side. This note would still apply with the 75 feet where we can do it. We just shift the canal, and where we can't meet the 75 feet, we would be looking at putting culverts in replace of the canal. Same with this typical section from Cumberland to Jog Road. Most of this, like I said, is pretty much like the previous one. We still be piping the existing ditch. The only difference here is you're probably going to have just a little bit of change in the right of way on each side compared to what we showed you in the previous, in the best fit alignment. So we put together an alternatives comparison table here, and we've included the comparison with the no build as well, since that's always a viable option in a PD&E study. And you'll notice there's a lot of benefits from doing the project when it comes to vehicle safety, improving the traffic flow, pedestrian and bicycle improvements we've highlighted here. And the construction cost here that we're showing, the 33.9 and 36.7, they're pretty close. The one concept, or both of these numbers include assuming partial displaced left turns at the Jog Road intersection. And some of the components that we've looked at, we've analyzed engineering as well as environmental components. And another key component for the final decision on this is input from the public. At this time, we have tentatively scheduled a public workshop for June 28th, which would be an online workshop, and followed by a in-person workshop the next day on June 29th, which would be at the Hagen Ranch Road branch library. Once this becomes official, it'll be advertised on the project website, which I'll discuss in a moment. The public hearing, we're scheduled right now tentatively for November, December time period of 2021. And some of the coordination that we've had already, we've had several meetings with Lake Worth Drainage District, and we will be meeting with them again next week to talk about some of those concepts that we discussed with realigning the canal as well as the piping. We've held some meetings with Palm Beach County as well as the TPA. This is the project website, which, as I mentioned, will have the information for attending the public workshop once it becomes advertised. So these are just some of the other agencies that we coordinate with on these types of projects. The key ones, as I mentioned, right now, Palm Beach TPA, the county, and the drainage district. Our timeline and funding, we began this study in February of 2020. We're looking to have approval in June of 2022. We're now looking at this June 28, 29 timeframe for a workshop, as I mentioned, with our public hearing, as I discussed, to be held later this year in November or December. The design for this project, design phase, is funded for fiscal year 2022, right-of-way fiscal year 2024, and construction is currently not funded, and it is a candidate project for fiscal year 2027. With that, Alexander Estrada, which is here with us today, he serves as the FDOT project manager, which you can reach out to him if you have any further questions, or the FDOT communications manager. The safety message from the department: to slow down, stay cool, have a safe summer travel. And with that, we thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any comments from committee members on this item?
Madam Chair, before we take those comments, I did want to note there are no general public comments on this, but I do have James and then VJ with their hands raised.
Okay.
Excuse me, I
James?
hate to interrupt, but how do I raise my hand? Marjorie?
How about James and then,
I have Paula asking how to raise her hand.
Oh,
I'm
my-
sorry. Paula, in your, at the bottom of your taskbar, there should be a raise hand function in Zoom. You may have to expand the screen to see it. Otherwise, it may be, if you hover over your name, you should be able to raise your hand.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just have two questions in concern to this information item. One being, where has the partially displaced left turn intersection been built in the state to date?
To my understanding, there's none that have been constructed right now. The intersection of Beeline and North Lake Boulevard, there is a design that's been approved, I believe, for that location to build one of these, which would be, I think, in the next 3 years or so. So it is going to be coming here in Palm Beach County. There are none at this time. Asan, I think you mentioned before that is there one that was built on the west coast of Florida?
Yes, that one in the SR82 PDLT design was built in 2019 and open to the traffic in August, I believe.
And what's that corridor?
SR82 in Lee County. In
Lee County.
Lee Boulevard to Suwannee Road, and they call the continuous flow intersection.
CFI.
Yeah, and that's the same concept, and the new things is going to be partial display.
All right. And then my second question was, how many homes exactly would be impacted in the right-of-way acquisitions?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
And then also, does that 33, but does that budget include that acquisition?
No, right-of-way cost is not included in that number. That number was strictly just the construction cost. I guess when you're saying impacted, are you talking about right-of-way relocations or just taking partial property?
I think what James is asking for is, what is the total cost of the project? Not only the construction costs, but cost
Okay.
feasibility sometimes is considered when you have right-of-way takings also.
Yeah, so we're still getting right-of-way costs for some of the other intersection concepts, but right now we're looking roughly at about $30 million in right-of-way acquisition total for the project, ballpark number.
In addition to.
In addition to the construction, correct.
All right. Marjorie, can you help me? Who's the second person that has VJ? I apologize.
It's all right.
Usually, I'm sorry. Usually when prior to the pandemic, we typically have our card up. So I apologize if I didn't see you.
Okay. Actually, James asked the questions I was going to ask.
Can you speak into, I'm sorry, speak into the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, so James already asked the first question I was going to ask about the new alignment of how you're going to, because I haven't seen this and it's kind of a new and something, sometimes when you bring in new, it's just, you got to have a lot of training before you put some system like that. And I heard from explanation that it is happening on North Jog Road and North Lake, I guess, or Beeline.
North Lake and Beeline, yes.
Beeline, I think it's going to happen. So I guess by that time you will have some people, at least the drivers would have an idea of what this is supposed to look like. So that's the one thing. And the same question I had regarding the cost, because the two alternative, it does shows that there is a 33 and 36 million, but the southern option is mostly acquisition of the Lakewood Drainage District's right of way if there is any. So, and again, that being a local county agency, or it's a 528 agency, it might be much more easy acquisition than buying a home property behind the home. So again, it seems like they both are still in being discussion. Nothing has been finalized, but sounds like from the discussion that southern construction look expensive, but down the road, the real estate acquisition might be easier on that one. Just a thought.
Correct. The construction costs will be a bit more for the south alignment, but right-of-way acquisition we anticipate to be less.
I have Paula and Myron with their hands raised.
Paula, you
Thank
were
you.
first.
Myron, I apologize. Ran out of battery.
Am I on?
Okay. Oh, Paula's first. Okay, I apologize. Paula, please.
Okay, I thank you. I have a question about the, I just lost it. I had it on my screen, your presentation, but the issue involves pedestrian crossings. So you have partial displaced left turn lane, you have partial displaced left turn lane alternative, and then the triple left turn lanes. And I don't see a lot of pedestrian safe spaces, so to speak. The first, so this is a very large area for a pedestrian to try to cross. And I know that you don't want pedestrians crossing where you don't have enough protection, but they're going to cross. And so will you have crosswalk lighting in each of the sections? So as you get to partial displaced left turn lane, it seems like that there's a crosswalk to a oasis. There is a concrete place. And then you have the crosswalk continuing across the street all the way, no stopping. I know that most crosswalks that have this much real estate do not have a cross light that is long enough to help get a pedestrian safely across. So I know that you've got discussion in here about pedestrians, but I don't see enough sort of safe space.
Yeah, and one of the things that we talked about because of the distance of getting across is in the design, they could look at extending the nose a little bit from the medians and having the crosswalks go through there where they can still have some refuge in the median if need be, since that distance is very long. So they would look at some of that in the design phase to optimize those.
Yeah, I think Paula, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, would you include additional crosswalk signaling within those safe spots, oasis spots? So if it takes you, say, 30 seconds to here and then 30 seconds to there and 30, whatever it is, so that the pedestrian is looking directly at a light that says, go, don't go.
Correct.
I agree with Paula. The recommendation to include pedestrian signal, and I think that's part of the issues that we're going to run into here is the mid-block crossing at these very large corridors. If that's being analyzed, or should it be considered as part of the analysis to include pedestrian access mid-block? Did I say it correctly, Paula? Oh, she's still mute.
Yes, I'm shaking my head, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Myron is next.
Yes, so just for information, FDOT has prepared a video of how the movements for a displaced left intersection would look, what they look like the Beeline Highway at North Lake Boulevard. And it includes the perspective of the driver and the signage and all that sort of thing. And if any, I'm pretty sure it's on the FDOT website for the SR 710 project. If anybody's interested in looking at it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from committee members?
I see no other hands raised,
All
Madam
right,
Chair.
thank you. I have a couple questions. One is, I believe this project is identified on the 561 plan. And this is a question I'm looking directly at Andrew. Yes. Yes. Is there consideration for and I know it's a project that's coming up, but if we're looking at the 561 plan with a transit priority, is there any recommendations in the plan for dedicated bus? And I think that's one of the questions for the project team, is that if we can coordinate and figure out maybe on a high level, if there is going to be some kind of bus priority, or if there's going to be dedicated bus lanes, how is that going to affect the level of service as it's being analyzed in the future condition? If that can be looked at this level, so that that we know that when we go to public meetings, that there's transparency, right? Level of service in the future, level of service D or E might be worse if there is an introduction of a dedicated bus lane, or if there's any consideration that if there is a dedicated bus lane, that it actually takes away from vehicular capacity from the corridor and at those nodes, that it might sway one alternative over the other. So my other comment that I like to add is that you have 45 miles per hour design, 3 lanes with triple left as one of your alternative. And I know that it's FDOT standards to always introduce bike lanes with a buffer adjacent to these, these very large corridor. Personally and professionally, I do not think that that will provide the level of service that we need for from a pedestrian and from bicyclist level service perspective. I do appreciate that the project team has incorporated between 8 to 10 foot sidewalk, which also is can be considered as a multi-use path, and that might be a better suited location for bicyclists and pedestrians to utilize the space. And then lastly, it's really, it has a lot to do with the city, not so much as the project team, but from I'm looking at the existing land use, and I don't see that there's a lot of cross-access connections that could alleviate some of these demand on these intersections. So it might be as part of the coordination, my recommendation would, if you can coordinate with the city of Delray Beach at this location, to see if they could look at their long range planning efforts to see if there's any cross access that can be incorporated into their design. Okay, thank you so much. I don't have any further comments. All right, moving on to the second information item. Andrew, thank you. Thank you, FDOT and the project team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Euler, Deputy Director of Program Development. And I know we're running a little late, so I'm going to go quickly through this. And just to let you know, though, this draft mobility vision, we provided a map in the backup. This discussion is going to be ongoing, so this isn't going to be the last time you see it. There'll be discussions for the next few years, actually, and you'll see more material coming in the next few months as we refine what we are showing you today. One second. So our mission and vision, as Jason also mentioned, to collaboratively plan, prioritize, and fund the transportation system, a safe, efficient, connected, multimodal transportation system. So in this mobility vision, really the key highlight here I want to give you is the collaborative part. So really, this is not just going to be an effort between local governments, the TPA, the county, and the state. This will really require investments by the private sector as well, and citizen input and involvement. So a lot of collaboration is still to go through with here for this mobility vision. And so what is this mobility vision? Why are we developing a mobility vision? So we had our adoption of our long-range transportation plan for the TPA for 2045, and that was adopted in December of 2019. And through that process, we developed a list of desired projects, including all types of multimodal products. So road capacities, transit investments, other investments for safety, operations and maintenance. And so those desires is really what you're seeing in the implementation of this vision. So how do we reach that next step into implementing that desires plan? What setting this vision does in collaborating with everyone involved really does is accommodates growth for the future. We continue to grow here in South Florida, in Palm Beach County, and supports economic development. So we can focus our development in areas with existing infrastructure. So we have that combination of our land use patterns meeting our needs for transportation and vice versa, and then also investing in mobility options to promote safety and efficiency. And what this also allows us to do is provide a little bit more predictability to incite private investment. So you know where our major transit or roadway investments we go in the future. And so private investment can accommodate for that growth in the future. So how will this be funded? So this discussion we have and the map I'm about to show you and going through those projects really requires a local dedicated funding source. And a lot of the discussion that's been playing out at the regional level with our partner agencies, Broward and Miami-Dade, who've already been through this process, but it's been playing out here in Palm Beach County and discussing as well, is going towards a local transportation surtax as the most viable option. There's other options out there, but this seems to be the one that would be most suitable for amount of money generated. And so with this local transportation surtax or other dedicated funding source, what this really allows us to do is attract federal and state discretionary grants. So competitive funds that are out there at the federal and state level that go towards transit capacity and other types of improvements. Those all really require local matches. And then also this would allow us to accelerate reconstruction of other roadways for safety improvements or maybe capacity and efficiency purposes. And then lastly, what a local revenue source does, dedicated revenue source allows you to do is provide more operations and maintenance for new mobility services once they're built. So how are we going to, in the long term, operate and maintain these facilities? So the content in the mobility vision, it includes the 561 transit plan. So what that is 5 north-south corridors, 6 east-west, and 1 unified transportation system. And it also connects state roadways to that system. So implementing select transit investments in each corridor and rebuilding state roadways to accommodate safer facilities with pedestrian and bicycle improvements. This also includes county transportation investments. So rebuilding county roadways to create more safety and improve pedestrian and bicycle facilities. And this also includes enhancing traffic signal technology and efficiency throughout the county on those signals, including the ones maintained by the Palm Beach County, and then our other signal operator, who is Boca Raton. And lastly, there's a list of products that we have in here that you see on the map in a second here with road widenings, and which are additional investments needed in those areas that are more car-centric in our communities. And then the third ones are city transportation investments. So rebuilding, again, the city streets with pedestrian and bicycle facilities to create safer places for people. And then also investments in local mobility services. So services that can really be more circulators in cities and provide that last mile connections to the 561 transit corridors. And so here's the map that was provided in your backup. And this is that one item we had for you all. And I'm just going to run through the different sections right now at the high level. There's no cost estimates. What I'm showing you today, just providing a highlight. In the future, we'll be coming to you with a list and cost estimates to review as well. The first one's being the 561 transit corridor, again, adopted as desires in our long-range transportation plan for 2045, includes the 5 north-south corridors, the 6 east-west corridors to create one connected system. And you can see those in the map. And then adding to those are the pedestrian and bicycle investment corridors. So these are those high priorities that we also identified in our long-range transportation plan. And that includes pedestrian bicycle improvements along 117 miles of FDOT roadways, 189 miles of Palm Beach County-owned roadways, and 68 miles of municipal-owned roadways. The next are the roadway widening projects. And these are the county roadway widening projects on county facilities. And these are the ones that were adopted in our long-range transportation plan. And I wanted to make this point because in the long-range transportation plan process, through the public involvement and multiple coordination with all the stakeholders in the county and the cities, this was the final list that was adopted into our LRTP. And so this is what we're starting with as a base for this vision. And you can see a lot of those road widenings out in the Western community, more so than you see in the urbanized areas there on the east. And then lastly, additional products that are not mapped that I mentioned. So municipal mobility services, again, those last mile connections or circulators within cities and other small improvements, and then traffic signal investments, which would really impact all the signals within the county, maintained by the county and by Boca Raton. So really upgrades to the technology there and the infrastructure. And I believe that's one more slide, the implementation timeline, and then I'll be done for you all. So as I mentioned, this is going through refinement, and it's going to be more discussion in multiple venues throughout the county. But we're going to be refining this mobility vision elements from now until about 2023, receiving feedback from stakeholders in the community, creating more refined cost estimates for projects and services. And then how are we going to fund these through different implementing agencies? So who's going to be doing the construction, who owns the facilities, and then actually how are we going to break down that federal state funding and then local funding for those projects? And then once that's all figured out, really providing a greater educational campaign in early 2024 that explains this vision content. And then lastly, a ballot initiative in November 2024 when it comes to that infrastructure surtax. So there's actually already an infrastructure surtax in place that sunsets in 2026. So this is really going towards a discussion of replacing that infrastructure surtax in the future once it sunsets with something like a mobility vision. So that's where that thought came in with the providing a surtax as a way of creating a local dedicated funding source. And that's all I have for you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public at this time?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any board members with their hands raised virtually?
I don't see any, Madam Chair.
Okay. I have two very quick comments. Nothing controversial. Just really excited about the discussion for signal investment. I'm hoping that from a countywide perspective, that this round we're going to be able to obtain some bike signals within this level of investment. That's a wish list. And then the other thing that I was looking at this and I was thinking of electrification, especially for our electric bus or transit fleet. Maybe that's something that could be consistent with the 561 plan. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, last item, the Okeechobee Boulevard and State Road 7 study kickoff. James Reinhardt, TPA Transit Coordinator, to present on this item.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is James Reinhardt. I'm the lead transit coordinator for the Palm Beach TPA. I'm going to be providing an update on the Okeechobee Boulevard and State Road 7 multimodal corridor study. There's not a lot to update on since we are starting the project. We just kicked off the project, but I'm going to be providing an overview of what we're going to be doing and that timeline. So, there we go. So for a quick overview, we're going to be looking at the study purpose and limits, the components of the study, kind of highlighting what public and
It's out of battery. Yeah, I think it's on. It's red. No?
Okay, since we weren't sure when my microphone went off, I'll just start over. So thank you.
Yeah, mine's working. So why don't you use mine for now?
Okay, let's try this again. Hopefully I don't get cut off a third time. Yes, James Reinhardt, lead transit coordinator with the Palm Beach TPA. I'm going to be providing an overview to the Okeechobee Boulevard and State Road 7 multimodal corridor study. We're going to be touching on the study purpose and the limits, study components, the public and stakeholder engagement that'll be happening throughout the study, and wrapping up with the timeline. So as a quick reminder for everyone, the Okeechobee Boulevard and State Road 7 corridors were identified in the TPA's 561 plan, which comprises of 5 north-south corridors, 6 east-west corridors that creates that one enhanced transit system. Thank you. Connecting Palm Beach County to the rest of Southeast Florida. The purpose of this study is going to be evaluating multimodal alternatives for pedestrian and bicycle transit with that supportive land uses for the transit, as well as commercial and personal vehicles movement along this corridor. So the study limits for this corridor are starting down at the south end of State Road 7. It starts at the mall at Wellington Green, at the corner of State Road 7 and Forest Hill Boulevard, and moving north up to Okeechobee Boulevard. And then we'll turn east and go along Okeechobee all the way to Rosemary Avenue and downtown West Palm Beach. Within a half mile of this corridor, we've identified that there are 42,000 residents and 14,000 households, as well as 46,000 jobs. And we identified these within that half mile of the points that you can see on the map, which indicates that this is a good corridor to have a multimodal study. We can figure out a good way to safely and efficiently move people to places that they need to go in a nice multimodal connected way. So the components of this study, we're going to be hosting a series of public and stakeholder engagement events. And I'll get to that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. We're going to be looking at several different transit alternative analyses and roadway alternative analysis that we will be sharing throughout as we develop those analyses throughout the process, sharing those with the public and our stakeholders. We're also going to be completing a health impact assessment and land use and economic development analysis as we're going through the roadway and transit analysis work. For the public and stakeholder engagement components, and to keep them informed on what we're doing with the transit analysis, the roadway analysis, as well as the land use and health impact assessments. We're going to be developing a study advisory working group. That working group will have 4 meetings that will be updating. We'll be updating them as we move throughout the project and keep them informed. We're also going to be hosting a health impact assessment working group that will be comprised of a lot of the health professionals around Palm Beach County, and that are in particular ones that are have a stake in the along the corridor as well. We're going to be having 4 meetings with them. We're also going to be doing land use and economic development outreach, 2 rounds of meetings with the communities along the corridor, as well as a workshop with them, as well as the inviting businesses along the corridor to that workshop. We're going to be hosting up to 32 key stakeholder meetings or interviews with different representatives from the local government, as well as stakeholders along the corridor. And some of those are going to be overlapping with those that are being invited to the workshop for the land use and economic development outreach. And then we're going to be doing a series of public outreach events. We're going to have 3 public workshops. We're going to be doing field visits, as well as doing stories of the corridor interviews, which is some of you that were around for the US 1 corridor study. We did those with one of our consultants along for that project. And it's a really great way to get people to get some great feedback from those that are riding the transit along that route. And we're going to take that success and implement it on this study as well. And then we're going to be, we have launched a website for this study to be the catch-all location for any updates on public events. Also, it will house our online interactive survey once we've completed it and launched it for the public to review. And then where we're going to be storing any documents that are created as part of this study. So the study timeline, I've broken it out into quadrants. The first group from April to June, had our kickoff meeting and did a series of coordination to invite people to be a part of the study advisory working group and HIA working groups. We're hosting the first meetings for those in this month. We're going to be doing stakeholder interviews and the stories of the corridors in this during this timeline as well. And from July to September, we'll be hosting the second round of those working group meetings and hosting our first public outreach event. From October to December, we're going to do the third round of working group meetings, second public outreach, and then present an update to the TPA board and the committees in December. And then from January to March, we'll wrap up with the final round of working group meetings and public outreach event, and then finalize the study to present to the TPA board and the committees in March of 2022. And so a way to get involved with this study is we are going to, you can visit the project website at palmbeachtpa.org / it's actually /Oki. This was a former URL. We can take surveys once we have it ready and promote participation within your community. And if we would like to, while Robin switches over, I'd like to pull up the website just to show the homepage for this study. I'll let her do that, but I guess while she's working on that, are there any questions for me?
Yeah, so at this time, ooh, it's loud. Are there any questions from the public on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Are there any board members with their hands raised virtually?
Yes, I have Paula Ryan and Michael Carter with their hands raised.
Okay, great. So Paula?
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to point out that so much of the funding that we're going to ultimately be looking at to help build out these transit corridors or multimodal corridors are going to be done with an eye towards creating more equity within the community. And which means that in this public engagement piece, being able to tap into those in the community that would not necessarily have the time to show up for a public meeting on something that is of such great importance. You have 30%, I think, are noted as being households are low income, 45% have one car, and 9% have 0 cars. And those are the people that have the hardest time getting out and participating, so that the resources that are ultimately going into what this study will hopefully recommend, it needs to be done with an eye towards, getting feedback from those people who are going to be most impacted. And I'm curious as to what your strategy is going to be to not only do this, but also to document it, and what other partners, you might be working with to help facilitate. What comes to mind obviously is PalmTran Service Board, since those are their, so much of their ridership. But so those are my questions. I'm curious to see, and I look forward to getting the results back.
Great, thank you. And I can say that we have PalmTrans. I guess he was their planning manager, and now he's been recently promoted to their director of planning. He is participating in all of our internal coordination meetings, as well as having a seat at the study advisory working group and the health impact assessment working group meetings to provide the PalmTran perspective on the alternatives that are being reviewed and analyzed along this corridor. And then we're going to be working with them closely as we do our stories of the corridor interviews, where we ride the route and interview those that are along the route, or interview people along the route, and get feedback from the community about their experience on this corridor and how we can implement what they say into some of our the final locally preferred alternative.
Okay, thank you. I believe, Michael, you're next.
I did have a follow-up question, and it's along the same lines as Ms. Ryan's questions. Has there been a consultant hired to help with the outreach, or is that taken care of internally, is my first question. And the reason that I'm really concerned about it is that diversity is important, as well as getting out and getting the opportunity to talk to the underserved people in our community. And if it is an outreach contract or a consultant is hired, I'd be interested to see how they're going to go about reaching out to different parts of the community and getting input from everybody, because this Okeechobee and State Road 7 has been a big issue in the city of West Palm Beach for the last 15 years. So I'd be interested to know how we're going to approach the outreach and talking to folks as well.
Sure. May I answer, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
We have hired a consultant that has developed, besides their own team, their own internal team, also a team of sub-consultants to help with the outreach efforts. One is as a sub-consultant that they primarily focus on health impact assessment. That's like their primary, that is why they were hired as a sub, and that's what their primary focus is, to assist with the lead consultant team, as well as another sub that is going to be helping with that on the ground, interviewing and working closely with the public on the efforts. And they're also going to have a lot of experience with survey development and trying to push that information to make sure that we're reaching out to everyone that along that corridor as well. So we're trying to make sure that it is getting a lot of, we're trying to get as many people and try to focus at it's getting lots of feedback from the community.
All right, thank you. Michael, do you have any additional comments? Is he on mute?
Yes, Madam Chair, he's muted.
Will we get an opportunity to see the results from those discussions with community folks, or does that come back to us or no?
That will be presented to the advisory working groups for the study, but we will also be sharing updates in December on the progress. And a lot of that work will be done before December, and then we'll be sharing the results in March from the study.
If you have any contact of neighborhood stakeholders or anything in the corridor, I have some contacts that I'll be more happy to share to help you with the neighborhood outreach or the community engagement, especially for some of these underserved neighborhoods. So I'll share it with
Absolutely.
Margie.
That would be great. Thank you.
Right. Do we have any other questions at this time?
I have no other hands raised, Madam Chair.
All right, great. So thank you so much. We're down to item 4, administrative item. These are informational items only. There are no staff presentation unless it's requested. And are there any public comments on these items?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any committee member comments?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, our next CAC meeting is scheduled for July 7th, right after the 4th of July holiday weekend. So please, thank you for your patience with us as we conducted this committee meeting today. At this time, our committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.